So let me introduce you to everybody. I'm so happy that Clarence A. Haynes, who is the author of The Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery, has joined us today for the February 2026 QLP Book Club. It's our first one of this year, so thanks. And it is the month of love, right? It's Valentine's Day, so this week. So thanks for joining us in February.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see everybody. And yeah, I it really hasn't been hitting me that this is technically the week of love with Valentine's Day on Saturday, and then it's Black History Month. So it's I always kind of have these things uh juggling these things in my mind, but for some reason this year it didn't really hit me until like the past couple of days. So
Well, it is all of those things, and so I'm happy that you're here. And for those who don't know, I'm just going to quickly explain a little bit about Clarence. Obviously, you're an author who has other books than this one that we're talking about. You co-wrote Omar Epps' acclaimed young adult sci-fi fantasy Nubia: The Awakening and its sequel, The Reckoning. Additionally, talking about Black History Month, you are also the author of the nonfiction work The Legacy of Jim Crow, which provides young readers with an overview of the history of discriminatory laws in America. And then you, on top of Gwendolyn, you have a new book that's coming out this year, your second novel, which is The Broken Hearts Agency, which comes out in June. So that's exciting. Can you tell us a little bit about it? We'll talk more about it later, but tell us a little bit about Broken Hearts.
sure. So Broken Hearts Agency is set in Washington, D.C., and it follows a private investigator who's also a psychic empath, and she can sense when people are reeling from something that's really gone wrong in their lives, when they're reeling from emotional pain. And to help these folks out, she enters into what I call ritual with them. There's a advertising exec that we're introduced to in the beginning of the novel. She's reeling from something I won't go into. But the two women, she's summoned to Linda's agency, and the two women meet and enter into ritual. While this is happening, people in DC are succumbing to some sort of weird affliction where they're showing up with memory loss, glowing red eyes, and burning skin. And so people are concerned that another mass supernatural event is on the horizon, which is what happened in Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery. So it's the same literary world as Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery, even though you can read each book on its own. And once again, it features, has a range of representation. It's so important for me. It features, of course, a female protagonist, and also lots of queer representation, which is super important to me in everything that I write. So
Well, so let's talk about that. In Gwendolyn Montgomery, which is the first book of yours that I've read, we get this sort of what you've called glam horror, and I know it's urban fantasy. So are you a trailblazer creating glam horror?
no, I it's been done before. So one of my the thing that filled my heart with so much glee was over Halloween. Book Riot said, if you're into the Rocky Horror Picture Show, read books like this. And The Ghost of Gwendolyn Montgomery was listed as one of them. And I was like, I have been seen. Yeah, because
That is great.
for me, yeah, it's certainly been done before. I think Rocky Horror Picture Show is a perfect example, where you're sort of taking these aesthetics that are associated with a certain type of fashion, and um, I would also say really prioritizing sensuality, sexuality, the erotic, being in one's body, and then placing horror elements alongside that. So that's where we came up with that term. I don't think of myself as the um no one else is doing it. People have done it, but I would argue it's not done super regularly. It's done here and there.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, it takes a fabulous guy like yourself to get it going, right? So
Uh, You're
I
kind.
want to I want to talk a little bit about Gwendolyn. So you have this sort of code switching heroine at the center of your book. And she immigrated from Panama as a child, we find out. And then I know you grew up, you also immigrated, or you have Panamanian roots, but grew up in the Bronx. And so a lot of this happens in the Bronx, which is also not a borough that we always get in novels, right? It's always Manhattan and Brooklyn these days. So good for that. And it's infused with Caribbean culture. It's steeped in Santeria and Yoruba, which you probably can't see, but there's actually a little Yoruba god back there behind my head somewhere. Because it's from, I got it in Brazil. So tell me a little bit about that, about why Gwendolyn shares this sort of background that you're familiar with.
I wanted to I knew from my this is my solo debut novel. I've written other books and I've co-authored fiction with Omar Epps, but this was the one that I'm doing on my own and sort of my entry into the literary world as a solo novelist. And I wanted to do something that would honor my roots. My family on my mother's side, who I grew up with, is from Panama, and I was born in the Bronx. Yet the Bronx at a certain time, and still is, I'll say, was so infused with certain types of culture, what we would call Afro-Latine culture, even though that wasn't such a common term when I was growing up. And so I wanted to do something that would honor the borough that I'm from. As you said, Gwendolyn has constructed a particular type of identity, but her roots are associated with Panama and the Bronx. There's another character named Fonzie Harewood who runs a botanica in the South Bronx, who's gay and who's Panamanian American as well. And so I just drew a lot from my personal history when thinking about who I wanted the characters to be and what type of New York I wanted to
Right.
present. So yeah, but it really just came down to, okay, this is first solo novel. It has to feel personal. It has to feel connected to my roots.
So you mentioned Fonzie, and I actually want to play a clip from the book. I don't know if you've listened to the audio,
I
but
have not fully, but I have listened to parts of it extensively.
yeah.
Parts of it, and they did a fabulous job. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, it's narrated by Brittany Bradford and Andre Santana, and the clip that I want to play is from chapter 2, La Playa, which is the name of the botanica. As you mentioned, that Fonzie is a queer Afro-Latin medium from the South Bronx. He runs this botanica, and he's involved in what we could say is a love triangle with a ghost and his mortal ex, Raphael. And so this is a clip from there. It's just you're introduced to Amadei. So here we go. You ready?
Ready.
He stepped onto the bed, turned around, and lay on his back, ready, naked, sleepiness gone. He was trying to relax, to ignore the nervousness that crept into his frame whenever he waited for the ghost who'd once written his name on a bathroom mirror. Amadei. A red wooden cube sat on a low table in front of Fonzie's bed, perfectly in line with his legs. The box featured 2 intersecting lines embedded with calligraphy, the symbol of Papa Legba, the voodoo deity of the crossroads, a memento of Fonzie's trip with Raphael to a part of the Dominican Republic bordering Haiti, one of many trips the two had taken during their whirlwind romance. The steady beat of Bulletproof Soul drifted into the room as Fonzie experienced delectable presence, a warm fullness in his throat, gentle strokes along his chest and arms and thighs, tickles on his forehead and neck, Amadei saying hey. According to Guardian lore, the dead craved texture, to be reunited with the physical world. Hairy, curly terrain preferable over smooth skin any day. Fonzie's forest of curls served as antennae, an enticing playground for contact. So many mystics were considered sloppy with their uncombed tresses and unshaven crotches and flouncy outfits. But a medium's mission was to make connection, provide connection any way they could with what they had, including their bodies. And so it went. On another Thursday night, the foreign presence who'd stowed away, tethered to a box, found deep pleasure in his new boo.
I'll stop there. I was actually going to go further. It gets into where Amade actually enters him, but I'll leave that to the imagination.
I was like, oh, and you're playing the risque part.
Well, you mentioned sensuality. It's an erotic moment, and I don't think I've ever read or listened to quite a scene like that before. So tell me a little bit about why it was important to go there.
So it was really important for me. So just to contextualize the scene a bit more, Fonzie is reeling from a recent breakup with his ex-boyfriend Raphael, who's still kind of in the picture, and Fonzie honestly is still trying to figure out if he wants him to be around. But he's really disappointed. There was Raphael represented a sort of elegance, a certain type of I guess Fonzie feeling like he's achieved a certain type of status in life, being with sort of this guy who is really put together. And so he's hurting, and so he basically, though, while hurting, starts to turn to a spirit, a ghost, who he's able to readily make contact with because he's a psychic. The issue is he's not supposed to do that. The laws of his order are that they're supposed to maintain the boundaries between our world and the ghostly world. But he feels like he's in need, and this spirit has just been so good to him physically, shall we say. And I wanted to present what it would be like to essentially have sex with a ghost, because pretty much in the first chapter, I present Gwendolyn being physically intimate with this dude who she's starting to see James. And I just feel strongly that I don't really like for there to be, when it comes to representations of queer, gay sexuality, I just really feel like, well, if I can readily put uh, you know, heterosexual sex on a page, which, traditionally, there's just been far more acceptance about. There's no reason for me not to go there with the queer psychic. And in fact, it's more, in some ways, it's more interesting just because I think it brings up issues around motivation. Why is Fonzie turning to an entity that he doesn't really know what this ghost might do, what his intentions are, why he might turn to something that's more mysterious and nebulous. Also, interestingly, one reviewer even once said that called the ghost an incubus, which is uh, uh, I think implies then that the ghost is predatory, which
Right.
isn't my intention, but I thought that was interesting that someone went there. So I just think it's just creates a interesting plot element while simultaneously making sure that we're in the mix. I just don't I know in terms of how the book world works that so often it's like, okay, this is a queer love story, so we're only going to have queer sex. This is a straight love story. We're only going to have straight sex. What's interesting now, though, is that different people with different sexual orientations are going or sometimes reading the queer love story, and that's great. But I think I'm interested in sort of, as much as I can, having the full gamut of sexual experiences, full gamut of desire presented in stories, because I think that's what the world is. I think any sort of compartmentalization of sexuality where one is heightened, highlighted over the other is just dishonest. And I think historically, we are expected, gay folks have been expected to be like secondary in terms of
Right.
how our physical expressions, how our forms of desire are presented. I just don't have an interest in that. So
Well, what I appreciate, because you're also obviously touching on the fact that these straight girlies are really obsessed with gay love stories and gay sex right now. But I like it when a gay man or a queer person actually presents those, because I can normally tell the difference in how it's written.
That's
Uh,
the problem.
so,
What would you say? How can you tell the difference? I have a guess as to what you're going to say.
I mean, I just think that a certain way of talking about the actual pleasure part is different. we're interested in certain physical things that maybe straight women writers aren't always aware of.
I was going to say it's the that's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, I think the willingness to go there in terms of how it physically works,
Yeah.
and finding seeing the pleasure in that, and the mechanics of it being something like, no, we gotta put that there, we gotta get.
But people often tell you not. I mean, as a writer, I know I get this, not to put sex in there, and that sex is bad because it can be so cheesy. But your sex scenes are not cheesy. So,
Oh,
did you ever worry about that though? That people might be like, ugh.
The only time, two things. The only time I felt a little bit weird is that my imprint that's published me, I also have historically done some freelance editing work for them, and so they know me, and so I've like been in office. I was like, oh my goodness, this feels a little I'm really being vulnerable. Like they're going to like have a sense of of how
Of
I
your inner
see things.
workings.
Yeah, and so that felt a little odd. And you know what is interesting? I have seen some readers say, "Oh, I don't know if they were referring to the sex, but I think they have said that some parts they find cheesy, but I'm actually okay with being seen as cheesy in some ways. I know Gwendolyn's sex scene, how James has sex is a bit cheesy, but it's not by accident. Like I'm
Well,
aware.
you kind of imply that James is kind of corny.
Yeah, like like, but he's good at sex. Like that was
Right.
the thing. That's interesting. I spoke to a book club once, and they so there's another character named Arturo who it's clear he's into Gwendolyn as well, and he's more cool. He's cooler. He's an artist, and he has, he just looks sexier, and he just has his outfits together, and has a certain type of swag. And James just doesn't have that. James is really professional guy who's kind of, chipper and upstanding.
Into stuffed
And
animals.
yeah, into stuff, that's it, into G.I. Joe figurines from his childhood. And but he still knows how to have good sex. He still knows how to please Gwendolyn. And so I wanted to showcase that because I think that's a reality too that sometimes we don't really honor. The sex sometimes between them is kind of goofy, and that's okay. Like I think that I just think that's part of the experience. And I'm always one of my goals with everything I write, and so this is considered urban fantasy, but it's technically really a fusion of genres, right? And so there's a bit of mystery, there's a bit of romance, bit of horror. Um, and so when it comes, like, for instance, to the romantic elements, I always want to turn things on their head. I always want to do things that feel out of the box, that haven't been done before, that will get people hopefully thinking, talking. I'm fine if they disagree. I'm fine if they're not quite on board, but I just want it to feel like, oh, that's why did he make that choice? Or why did the characters make this choice? How does that make me feel? It's particularly going to come up with in the next book, The Broken Hearts Agency, because so much of that is very much a meditation on desire,
Mhm.
and how we move through the world, how we handle our desire, how we sublimate it, how we give it up for the sake of safety, how the past can really impact how we do intimacy, which is a theme for Ghosts of Gwendolyn as well. But for the next one, it's really, really overt. So
Yeah, I mean, both of these characters have trauma in their past, and we learn more about that as the novel goes along, obviously. And I'm curious, obviously, you thought deeply about this, and your characters are trying to overcome their backgrounds and find connection. And Fonzie, in some ways, is having a really hard time. He talks about how he has tried to make himself into a certain kind of person to attract gay men, and now doesn't want to do that by the end. And Gwendolyn has also transformed herself into this fabulous PR person, and also has to think about that. I mean, what do you think about or tell me a little bit about that, about them trying to have their mortal life and their mystical life and the struggle and the tension. Obviously, all good stories have tension in them like that, but they really are trying to also get through that.
Sure. I'm one of my obsessions, I believe that writers, we tend to have core things that we're obsessed with that are our primary concerns of our writing. And then for each project, we figure out different ways to explore that. So one of my obsessions is the past, and how if you don't reckon with the past is going to reckon with you. And so for both of these characters, there are traumas, disappointments. Gwendolyn I won't go into what the trauma was for those who haven't read the book, but she's deeply traumatized as a child. And she figured out a way to survive and then ultimately to construct a world for herself that would make her feel safe and that would make her feel have a certain type of power that would make her feel powerful.
Yeah.
Fonzie had a mother who we call Madrina for the most part in the book, who didn't really fully see him and didn't really fully value him and love him in the way that she could have as his mom, because A, she was filled with bitterness, and then B, when a certain other character came into the scene, she was like, oh, this is this is the apple of my eye. And so he's always kind of felt like, okay, well, to get love, I have to make myself be someone I'm not. I have to constantly be in service to other people. I have to figure out what other people want and try my best to be that. And that's just not sustainable. That's not healthy. It leads to pain, heartache, and an abandonment of self. So long story to say, both characters are dealing with things from their past that in ways in which that they're able to survive, but they haven't really reckoned with what they've gone through. And once you start to reckon with what you go through, that what you've been through, then you can integrate all these different elements of yourself and you can behold your full, powerful, badass self. And that was my intention to highlight as much as I could. But I'm really invested in people understanding there are consequences to not dealing with the pain from the past, from when we were so young that we couldn't really control what was happening with us.
So what you're saying, though, is that is the topic that is going to continue to be the itch that you're scratching in all of your writing?
Pretty much. And it's challenging. I just because I'm technically I'm realizing I'm a sparse. What's the better pronunciation? I'm a sparse writer, and so I say something once, maybe I'll say it one more time, and then I move on. And so when you're doing these like sort of like psychodynamic meditative things, but I'm going quick, I know I've begun to realize as well as like why I'm so happy to be on this platform with you is because it's important to be able to share with readers where I'm coming from, because then I'm realizing some readers are like, I understand, I get it, so.
I mean, it's great that you're saying that because, most of us as writers, we're taught that, right? Of like being spare in our prose, not explaining and just showing and not telling. But I found lately that readers maybe are not spending as much time and that you do have to like explain a little bit more, or you have to like revisit something because they might not get it the first time. Have you found that when you've been discussing the book over the last year?
I have. So I just saw on I don't read too many reviews at this point, but it's funny. I just saw I was on Storygraph and I just saw that someone who wrote a review and he met me in some context and he said, "Oh, I heard him speaking about the story and now I get I get it. I'm gonna up my review to 4 stars." And I was like, wow. I was like,
You're like, where's that fifth star?
So it's been really interesting. Yes, I think I have had some readers say they wanted a bit more, or at the very least that it moves fast for them. But I still feel like maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
I still feel like I would feel like I failed if someone said that wasn't interesting or the writing wasn't of a certain caliber or because I'm okay with people saying, "Oh, I'm not sure if I fully got everything. Oh, this moved quickly." But what I really hope at the end of the day is people will be like, but I'm feeling something. I'm trying to figure out something. There's something that was going on here. Let me sit with this.
Right.
And um that's my hope. So
Of course. Of course. So to circle back to Gwendolyn and what she's dealing with. I mean, obviously there's an epic plot here, right? We have a lot going on, and I'll let readers discover that who haven't already. But I am interested in these unresolved emotions that she and Fonzie have, and I mean, what does it mean to you when we talk about this, about wanting people to have healthy relationships and feeling like they can't? Obviously, you want them to resolve these issues, but do you feel like your characters are broken at some fundamental level, or are they trying to fix themselves? Is that the wrong language?
that's so interesting. That's a wonderful question, wonderful observation. I usually don't use terms like broken or needing to be fixed because maybe that implies a certain type of judgment. What I would
Right,
say though is that they're not whole. They're not
right,
fully actualized. What they're heroic. Both characters are heroic in that they've managed to they're resilient. They've not only managed to survive, but they've managed to both in their own ways professionally thrive,
right.
right? And I think that's great. But in terms of really, really if they could really sit with what they've gone through and acknowledge the pain, the trauma, the hurt, then I just think they would approach life in what I would just call a more holistic and
Right.
reading the term actualized way. Like there are Gwendolyn has hidden mystical abilities that she hasn't used in years and has a connection to the realm where ghosts dwell that is very unique and almost unprecedented in the order that she technically belongs to. Fonzie hides in terms of always, in terms of how his powers work. He helps people get in contact with their recently departed loved ones and helps connects with the ghosts, helps the ghosts make peace, helps the loved ones who are still alive have peace. And he does great work, but he also has lost himself in that. He's not always taking care of himself. He's not always looking after what he fully needs. And he also, one funny thing is he looks a hot mess because he thinks he's just like, okay, well, all I care about now is attracting my ghost lover, and they like texture and things that they can, grasp onto. So his hair is crazy, and he's disheveled. He has a huge beard, and that's not really him. For those who
Right.
that is who they are, and that's how they want to walk through the world. Fine, but that's not how he wants to. Be looking. That's not how he grew up. That's not for him sort of a pleasing aesthetic. But this is what is pleasing to this entity, or so he believes. And so there are just ways in which they're moving. And then before that, he was trying to be Mr. Preppy, travel, go to all these fabulous places with Raphael, and cultivate a certain type of lifestyle, Fonzie, which wasn't quite him either. And so, I just think there's a cost, I guess
Yeah.
is ultimately what I'm saying is if we don't um, really allow ourselves to, I think part of the process is mourning. what we've lost. We all, I think most of us have gone through things in childhood that we ultimately realized we shouldn't have gone through, and then mourning the fact that, oh, it would have been better if I'd had this type of childhood, mourning the
Yeah.
fact that we didn't have that, and then seeing what's there, seeing what, when you're not so obsessed with um trying to fix what you technically can no longer fix, then seeing how you would move through the world. A lot of, so many of us do is, because we didn't have control of our lives when we were really young, we reenact, we're not realizing that the decisions we're making are being informed by that time. So it's almost like we're choosing certain lovers because it's like, well, if I could if I can do this, if I can, like, somehow convince this guy to be into me, then that will fix the pain of, my mother not being into me,
Right.
or being made fun of because I was so effeminate as a kid, or whatever your thing is. And we don't quite make those connections. So
I love that you talk about that because I don't know how you feel. I mean, you and I are both Gen X, so I feel like we armored ourselves in certain ways growing up as queer kids, probably. Whereas I'm always impressed by the younger generation who can maybe feel like they're more connected to this authentic self than maybe I wasn't always growing up because I was just trying to stay alive. And, and I would assume growing up in the Bronx as a gay boy, that was also similar. So yeah, that's a really interesting concept. I think one of the ones that we try to get at is that one that we often armor ourselves, right, and don't allow ourselves to have certain vulnerability, or we do we can sort of assume certain identities based on the people that are around us because we're trying to fit in or we're trying to be loved. Um, so I want to ask you that question, which I ask everybody, which is about how do you define love? And I, warned you that I was going to ask because it's not always an easy question. But you're an author and you think about these things, and obviously your characters do. So I don't know, how do you define it? And is it something that is, that hot thing that happens, love at first sight, or is it a thing that lasts forever and can be boring and domestic? That's
I
one
think
way I look
love, I think love is actually far more on the boring domestic side of things. But it's never ending. It's just there. And it starts from within, and it starts from how you feel about yourself. And from that place, how you move through the world, and then who you want to connect with intimately, and then how you want to connect. What is it going to feel like? And technically, it could be everything from a one night stand to decades long matrimony. I think all of that can be infused with love. And the act of love, generally, for me, it involves um, care, kindness, thoughtfulness, sensuality, and eroticism. Not necessarily sex, but sensuality, presence. I think, when I'm on, I've had boyfriends or pseudo boyfriends, and I'm single now. And so when I'm on the apps, for instance, and I so often see people listing things that I'm just like, I have no idea how you treat someone or how you want to be treated. But I know that you like to brunch and that you've traveled to 45 countries. And I'm like, who cares? That doesn't tell me anything about how you would show up with someone romantically. Because I tell people, I was like, it really is like, can the person you're with, are they able to just like come up to you and just, if you're making your tea or you're cooking something, so, and just give you a squeeze and be like, hey, how are you, honey? it's that simple, and so that to me is what love is. Love is this big grand thing, but it's really like the smaller, what might be considered to many people the mundane things that I think create it. So
And I assume that we're going to get more of that in Broken Hearts because it's even in the title.
it is so much about that. I mean, so Broken Hearts in the first chapter. So and it's interesting. I start off the book with the supporting character. The main character doesn't show up. She shows up in the first chapter, but the chapter from her perspective doesn't come until chapter 3. And so we start off with her most recent broken heart, who is this woman named Evelyn, who's basically like worked her ass off for this ad agency and entered into this relationship because she was like, this is what I've been told will look good. This is what's going to give me a certain type of social cachet. This is where I will feel safe. And it is not remotely her. She doesn't know who she is. But at the same time, I found myself so um sympathizing so much with the character because I'm like, how many of us have been there? Where you've been given all of these messages about what's going to make you successful or a person of worth in this society, and there's this other being inside of you that's just like, please, but I'm this, please, let me out, so we can really live. So I explored that, and that's like this there's this whole romantic subplot for this character while people are walking around seemingly demon possessed.
I'm fascinated that you have the courage to embody these female characters. Have you ever had somebody tell you like, "Oh, why are you writing about these women, and why aren't you just sticking to guys?"
No, I haven't. I would, I grew up raised by women, and then most of my colleagues and people who I adore, for instance, in like publishing, are women, Black women. So I just wanted to, with Gwendolyn, I wanted to write something that would honor them, and then with the next book. I don't know. It just came to me as like, oh, and this is going to be another female protagonist, a lesbian, and she's going to feel different
Mhm.
from Gwendolyn. And I haven't gotten any complaints. My editor and publisher and friend as a woman, there are certain things there are certain things where I'm like, okay, so would she wear da da da? Okay, shapewear. Okay, so she's gonna do her hair like, and then my editor be like, no, this is what she is. So there are things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But yeah, no complaints so far. What is interesting is that people have really, with the Ghosts of Gwendolyn Montgomery, people have really, really taken to Fonzie, who appears in the second book as well. And so for a minute, I was like, well, is this because Fonzie's a gay male, I'm a gay male, and some of his experiences, as some of my people who know me are informed by my own my own tragic romantic history. But I think they take to him more. I try to do my best with Gwendolyn as well, but I think they take to him more because Gwendolyn in the beginning of the book is such a cipher.
Right.
She's so walled in terms of her emotional self, and so you can only get there are clues, and you can only get a sense of who she is via her work. And I think that's just feels I knew it would feel perhaps somewhat weird to some readers. And then you have this other character, Fonzie, who's just walking motion, who's just where he's at is
Right.
where he's at, and it. And he's like, oh, I don't feel good. I would make Ghost Lover make me feel good. And he's just he's just in his feelings. So I think that's been an interesting observation, but I hope people know that it's not from me being less interested in having a female character with all sorts of depth and layers. I hope by the end of the book people see that in her. It's just the structure of the book, because at first I can't reveal who
Yeah.
she really is, that I had to rely just on her work to provide clues and context.
Well, it's also good to know that Fonzie shows up in the second book, because you also leave it feeling very much like he's going to have another narrative to tell. So maybe there's a third book where he is the protagonist. So who knows? We'll see.
We'll see. In the second book, I'll just say there's some to that book, and it continues in the second book. And then what's interesting is in the second book, he's definitely more of a scholar. Like
Mm,
it turned out that his uh he's technically not even using his psychic abilities in the second book, but it's more sort of his awareness of mystical lore, of the rules and history of his organization that come into play. The second book is much more of a mystery, because
okay.
literally it's almost like it's a case that needs to be solved in terms of what's happening to people in DC. So
Glam mystery.
yeah, and it's less glam. You know, there were certain things that I was trying to do again with the second book, and I was like, no, that was Gwendolyn's book.
Right.
That's not gonna work for this one, because the protagonist, I was like, for the name of the main character in the second book is Linda Villanueva, and she's basically someone who likes to wear slacks and long t-shirts and a jacket and call it a day. like,
Less
she-
fabulous.
yeah.
Before I let you go, there was a question I wanted to ask you, because I read in an interview that you got to meet Octavia Butler, who was a huge inspiration for you. And I just was curious to know more, because she's such a queer icon. And I think, a big biography came out about her last year, and people were always discovering her new generation. So tell me a little bit about Octavia's work and what that meant, and how that feeds into what you're doing.
So Octavia Butler, just for those who may not know, please just look her up and check out her work. Her two most popular books are Kindred, which it's about a woman who is sent back, a Black woman who is sent back through time, through no. She can't control when she's sent back to slavery in America, and has to deal with that. And then Parable of the Sower, which is basically looking at a very dystopic America, in which a lot of people position as her being a prophet of sorts, and saying the ways in which what could happen here in the States in terms of social upheaval. So those are the two big ones, but she has many more, and I think checking out any of her book series would be a great thing. I met her at a reading for, I want to say, was it for Fledgling, which is her
Okay.
vampire novel? It's a particular take on vampires, which I should let people know. It's more sci-fi vampires, um, and um, it was at when there was still a Borders at Columbus Circle in Manhattan, and yeah, she was wonderful. I was editing at the time. Not writing, and she told me, but I told her how much I loved sci-fi fantasy, and she told me, "Oh, you need to write." And I was like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, we need your voice. You need to be out there." And it took me many, many years to follow that advice, but I'm so happy that I did. And so, along with Toni Morrison, she's my favorite writer. And the Broken Hearts Agency, the next book, there are things that I've done, particularly in the third act of the book, that are my homage to her, particularly a book she has called Mind of My Mind, that I purposely have done some things. Oh, and I'm calling out something in Kindred as well, but particularly Mind of My Mind. It's my way
Oh, that's exciting.
um, yeah, it's my way of honoring, wanting to honor her work, and sort of say, like, I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for her. So so yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I
Um,
wanted to take advantage of. Okay, the main character is psychic, empath, mind. Play with that.
Well, I mean, that's actually a really great way of going out. I think also just inspiring people that we do want to hear more voices and that there is room. It is a hard thing to get published, and so congratulations on
Thank you.
having these 2 books and obviously the other ones that you've also written. Any advice you have for that emerging writer who's out there trying to figure it out? I mean, it's not easy, but it's worth it, right?
No, it is totally worth it. You know, I have an orthodox path to being an author because I worked as an editor for so long that a lot of my relationships were just formed organically. Like I didn't necessarily have to go through traditional querying just because they knew once they were like, oh, he's starting to write now. Get Clarence to do, can we find out if he's available for this? Oh, hook him up with this agent, yada yada. So it's just a different
Mhm.
path. I didn't come to writing as sort of an outsider to publishing. I came to it as an insider. But what I would say to people, a number of things, is to really, really focus on your craft, focus on what you, the type of stories that you want to tell. It's good to do research to find out where you fit in the marketplace, and you don't have to be a perfect fit. I actually am of the mind that yes, you can definitely write to genre and write to trends, but it's probably more important to follow your heart and do something that's interesting to you. If it happens to fit the trend, wonderful. If it's connected to a trend but not quite the thing, that I fall more into that latter category, fine. And no, it might be more work in terms of convincing people to give you a shot, but I still think it's worth it in the long run because you're being having integrity in terms of your creative process. And then the biggest thing I would say is when for writers who are reaching out to agents, which is the most common way of having yourself presented to publishers, don't be discouraged. Take time, query, publishing people, I will say one thing, are sometimes very, very busy. So never take anything personally, and be very invested in forming relationships. Always be respectful, always be nice, even if you're speaking to someone and you're like, oh my God, this person is, ugh, just be really, really courteous, and keep it moving. Continue to make connections even when facing rejection, because the business is so relationship oriented. And I can tell you, editors, agents, everybody, even if it means a bit more work for them, they would much rather, they would love to work with someone who is pleasant and just
Yes.
makes them the joy. It's a joy to work with, as opposed to
Right.
someone who's, oh,
Yeah, I know we're given those diva ideas from, movies and other things, but it's not
no,
actually true. No.
no. It's always far, far more to your benefit to be like the nice, kind writer, and yeah, and just honor the relationships. Definitely there are going to be people in the business and who you might connect with and you realize, oh, this person's not for me, and that's fine as well. But always treat everybody with tons of respect, and
Yeah.
honor the communication, honor the time spent with whoever. So
That is just really great advice, and I'm glad that you say it because I tell people that, but hearing it from you has even more power, so that's good.
oh, thank you. Happy to be of
Um
service.
Well, I wanna thank you so much for joining me, Clarence, and, I also just wanna tell anybody who's listening to this, who didn't get to join us live, that if you're not already a subscriber to the Queer Love Project, you can find us on Substack, where you can discover all of our essays, podcasts, and interviews. It's free to be a subscriber. And again, thank you, Clarence. This has been an amazing way to kick off the year with you. So, excited for your next book as well. We'll talk more.
Thank you, Jerry. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you.
Bye.
Peace, y'all.